number 2. So just to kind of start off like over this week of learning, I think the biggest thing that I've got from everything is like being put into the mindset of like kind of not the mindset but like being able to see what it was like to be a slave, and then like just like some of like the trials and like issues that were like predominantly prominent during that time era. So like Harriet Jacobs kind of was talking about how early on in her childhood, like she didn't actually like even, it didn't really register for her that she was a slave, just because she was kind of sheltered from it. And she was kind of lucky to be, I wouldn't say sheltered from it, but just like she didn't really know, and that kind of kept a little bit of her childhood innocence before like she went through different things like getting sold later on in her life, beaten, sold, and just like, you know, stuff like that, and just the stuff she had to witness her grandmother go through on a consistent basis, and just like what her people also had to go through on a consistent basis. I also thought it was interesting reading the listening to the Nat Turner video, just kind of how he thought of himself as a prophet. I feel like that was kind of a big deal, just because a lot of African Americans and slaves back then were slaves, and they didn't really have that mindset, and they kind of had the mindset of just kind of struggle through it. So the fact that he wanted to fight back and they thought he was doing God's work by fighting back was, I feel like that was good. But I feel like also the way he went about it was a little unorthodox, but it also made sense. He kind of fought fire with fire, and I feel like one thing that really stuck out during that video was just a professor was saying that he kind of had the by any means attitude at that point, but I feel like it was to a further extent than what Malcolm X had said, in the sense that Nat Turner had killed kids during this whole trying to get free era of his life, and I feel like that's just a big kind of turning point in what I was learning about. I have a quote from Nat himself that kind of shows that he just kind of thought he was like a prophet, and basically that he just kind of saw himself as doing like the work of God. And just a quote from Nat during this whole thing that I thought was the most prominent during this thing. And he says, I'm gonna read it off this card. He says, I heard a voice in the heavens, and the Spirit instantly appeared to me and said the serpent was loosened, and that Christ had laid down the yoke he had borne for the sin of man, and that I should take it on and fight against the serpent. So basically what he's referring to the serpent as slavery and like the white man, and just kind of like how African Americans are being enslaved, and that I feel like was just like the biggest thing, because he kind of took it on himself to be able to kind of fight back, and he felt like that's kind of what God was asking for, and he felt like God was like had handpicked him to do the work. So I feel like that kind of stuck out, and just like over the learning period of this week, I feel like that's been like kind of like the main focus, to where like a lot of the stuff that was going on, slaves didn't know what to turn to and didn't know what to help. So a lot of them took it into their own hands. And then I feel like them taking it into their own hands, a lot of these books that we've read and a lot of these excerpts, it just shows that like what would happen if they did, and then what would happen to the ones that didn't. So I feel like that's what I got from this week.